WCAN Radio Africa, Caribbean Connect, WCAN Radio World, and HTBS Radio, does not endorse or validate the accuracy, reliability, or completeness of the information shared during these segments and conversations. Listeners are encouraged to exercise their own judgment and discretion when evaluating the content presented. We are committed to fostering open dialogue and diverse perspectives. We welcome feedback and constructive criticism from our audience regarding the content aired on our stations. Thank you for tuning into our network.
Good afternoon, and welcome to all our listeners from the various continents of the world to Heart Talk Between Sisters. We are an independent online radio station with international reach, and our mission is to empower and
Recording in progress.
One another, to greatly inspire our listeners to touch the hearts of many and to make a positive impact in our community. We thank you for listening in on our program this afternoon, and we say a special good night, good evening to our listeners in the continent of Africa, and also to our listeners from the Caribbean. We are streaming from the islands of the Caribbean region. And again, we thank you for tuning in. Last 2 weeks, we had some powerful women speaking. We had Karen Asgarali talking as a survivor of gun violence and what she did to overcome dealing with forgiveness and releasing the person, the perpetrator, and all the various challenges that she had. Last week, we had our Chief Superintendent of Police from the country of Ghana, and she spoke about being the first female police officer in the African continent and in a country to have received a PhD or obtained a PhD, and also the work she has been doing in her community using art therapy to address ills in our society. And today we have another great and powerful woman who comes from the island of Tobago, and that's the country of Trinidad and Tobago. And her name is, I had to practice it a few times, but her name is Dr. Kamane Soman. Very strong name. And she is a survivor of domestic violence and many other things. She recently received a Silver Honor Medal from the Tobago House of Assembly for community activists, and a special welcome to our THA listeners. Thank you to Nigel Phillip. I don't know if he has a chance to listen in, but Nigel Phillip from the THA Department of Health and Human Services. Thanks to Nigel for making this connection. And Dr. Kamane Soman has started an NGO called People Against Domestic Abuse, fondly called PADA. So I'm not going to delay anymore. I'm going to invite Dr. Soman to come, and we'll start the conversation talking about you, Dr. Kamane Soman. Who is Kamane Soman?
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Good day to everybody. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys today and to share my story, to share my journey, and to help other listeners that is listening with us today.
So tell us, who is Kamane Soman?
So I am a woman. I am a mother of 2 adult children. My daughter is 25. My son is almost 20. I am a sister. I am a daughter, I am a friend, and I would like to believe I'm a strong, powerful woman of God.
Okay, thank you for sharing that in the introduction. Now we saw, tell us about this THA Award for Community Activists, which you received last year.
Right. So last year, I would have received a silver medal from the Tobago House of Assembly. And, you know, sometimes we say that, we don't want to be recognized and we're just doing this because, you know, we're passionate about what we do. But, you know, in reality, it's good to be recognized. And I felt really, really good when I got that call that day, asking me if I would accept it. And I was like, yes, definitely. You know, so I received the silver medal for community activists, not just with based in the community, but for the work that I do with PADA, People Against Domestic Abuse, right here in Tobago, and even by extension in Trinidad. It's a very, very small NGO, but we do a lot. So receiving that award, I really, really felt, I felt good. You know,
Okay.
as I said before, you know, sometimes we say, no, I'm just doing it. It's because I love what I do. And I do love what I do, even though sometimes it's heartbreaking, but it's good to be recognized. And I must admit that.
Okay, well, congratulations again for receiving the award. But tell us
you.
a little bit more. You mentioned PADA and an NGO and stuff. You want to tell us some more about the work in PADA, what you do? You mentioned that some of the work is heartbreaking. You want to share some experiences you might have had. I know names are confidential and
Yes.
some situations are confidential, but certainly in terms of the work that you, what is PADA? You know, what are you about? Why did you start PADA?
So I started PADA in 2016, and I was just coming out of a domestic violence situation, a really, really horrible situation at that time. And having had to go to court and go to the police station and seeing how friends and family didn't understand and didn't know what to do, I recognized the need immediately. And even, but you know, going back from a very young girl, I always knew that God was calling me to help women. And I didn't understand. Having gone through that situation at the time, having going to court, running to police station, running to shelters. We really didn't have any shelters at that time in Tobago. Police officer, he advised me, he said, you know what, you're living through this experience and you're seeing what it is that you're going through. Make something out of this. Be a voice. And I started praying. Even while in the midst of what I was going through, which was a horrible situation at that time, the perpetrator tried to kill my children and I was a horrible situation. In the midst of that, I was seeing where God held me in the palm of his hands and I was seeing a miracle. I was actually seeing a miracle. And that's how PADA was birthed. And I started researching, I started going up online. And at that time, I only had my cell phone. And I started doing a lot of research and researching universities. And everywhere I could get a free course, I signing up. And I would just pay to just do the exam. And as I said, I did all of this on my phone. And I just started researching and researching and researching and just started elevating myself. For me, I recognized how powerful knowledge was, how powerful when you educate and you know more about it. And I, you know, for me, I was able to stand up in court eventually for myself and speak for myself, represent myself. And I thank God it's only because of him, because of the doors that he would have opened, you know. So PADA was birthed from that situation. We have directors an accountant, we have secretaries, vice president, you know, so we have a small team of people working alongside. What we do at PADA is we offer free counseling. So we offer, before gender-based violence started, the police stations, once a woman going to the police station, they would call us. We would go down, we'll have a conversation, get the information, try to see. We started working very closely with guest houses in Tobago, where we could get a night or two so we could house these women. I would immediately start the counseling. We also used to offer something called court support, where we would go to court with these women, because having gone to court myself, I recognize how frightening and intimidating the courtroom can be. When you go into that courtroom, you have the police, you have the magistrate or the judge, and everything is quiet, and the magistrate or the judge just talks either with the police officer or with an attorney. And sometimes you don't know what is happening. So I recognize the need, and I did a little bit of law studies so I could better equip and help women. So we offer the court support, we offer the counseling. As I said, we don't have a safe house, but we work very closely with the communities and business communities in Tobago, the villas, the guest houses. So sometimes we would get a night or two where we could house the women and their children if needed. And then we would make arrangement with other shelters in Trinidad to take them.
Okay. Well, I want to stick up in there and just because you shared so many things that I kind of want to go back to some of the things that you talked about. And one of the things that stuck out for me in what you've shared is your own determination to fix what was happening with you and to remedy the situation. And I think it's really interesting, that to me, I remember Karen Asgarali talking about accepting responsibility, right, for situations in our lives. It doesn't mean we blame ourselves, but it means that we accept responsibility. And one of the things you said basically is that you accepted responsibility for your situation and you sought to do something about it yourself instead of waiting for something to happen or waiting for some organization or person to come to you and say, here, this is the help, here, this information. There was a determination, a self-determination to get the information that you need and to get the help that you need. And there are many who may not have that drive or even that strength, that inner strength to be able to pick up themselves and say, look, I am going to get out of this and I'm going to try to better myself, So, I hope that is some encouragement to some of the women and the persons listening. We also have men listening in on the program. One of the other things you shared also was with your children. You mentioned the perpetrator wanted to try to kill your children. Also, how did your children cope with this situation? And what did you do to really help them deal with what was happening?
So for me, my children up to this day are my biggest supporters. And, you talked about I would have had that determination. My kids were a young age at that time. And I recognized that I had to do everything in my power to not only break this cycle of abuse, but to make sure that they are safe and become responsible adults. Because even in the midst of my studying, I would have recognized that hurting people hurt people. And sometimes when we don't, come to terms with our trauma, come to terms with the things that would have affected us, we take it into other relationships. And I didn't want this for my children. I wanted my children to be God-fearing, loving children, loving adults. And
so what did you do? What did you do to help?
I was very open. I was very, very open with my situation. And of course, they would have known because they lived through some of it. I was very open with my situation. I seek help for myself and my children. And I express to them that it's okay to ask for help. And it is okay to get help. And I supported them in that journey of where we were picking up the pieces back to our lives, which was it was hard because my friends didn't understand and they were protecting themselves. My family didn't understand, and which is understandable when you don't know something and you don't know how to cope. Everybody deals with situation differently. So my focus was on my children and I supported them. I got the help. I really, really thank God at the time. For Rape Crisis Society, they would have contacted me when the situation happened, and they would have sent a counselor to Tobago, and that lady would have helped my children and I to overcome. And I would have gone on to Rape Crisis Society and done a lot of courses with them. So the first journey for us was recognizing that we needed help and accepting the help.
Yes.
And doing that steps to become better. And the journey is hard. The journey is hard because even though it's a very long time ago, sometimes when I do talk about, I'm very frank and I'm open with the abuse, I see my kid's face, 25 and 20-year-old, I see it. And, so for me, I talk more of my journey of moving forward. But you have to get the help. You have to want the help. You have to put in the time for that help. I remember taking my son out of school and taking him to the counselor where she was at the time, and expressing to him that, son, you need this. And go ahead, and I would hold him afterwards. I remember those times. Sitting in the car and talking to him. And he was like, why I have to do this again? And I said, it's going to help you. You're going to feel better.
Wow, and it's real, and it's tough really for boys in particular, boys and men, to admit and even be open to getting help in situations like that, because they cope with things differently to women and girls. Women and girls would be more expressive and would voice things, but boys and men tend to keep things on the inside and handle it in a different way. So it's really interesting that you didn't force him, you encouraged boys to get the help, and that they actually went. I mean, would you say that they, and going through it at the time, they may not have understood, but they were appreciative of that help that was given to them?
I would definitely say yes, because as I said, my son is going on 20, and I would still see him using the tools that he would have gotten from that lady that day. And even my daughter, 25 years old, a professional in the world now, and I see them using the tools.
Yes.
And I must say that I have to thank God for providing the help for us.
Yes.
And opening that door for us. When I look at my kids, I really thank God that they are God-fearing young man, young woman that loves the Lord, serving the Lord, and walking in His ways.
Yes. And
these things can make you bitter. Eh?
Yes.
These things depending on your outlook, it can make or break you. And I decided that this was going to make my kids and I.
Yeah. Well, we thank God for that, and thank God for His grace and His presence and working in your life, in addition to all the other support that you would have received.
Yes.
Just want to commend the Rape Crisis Society, because they have been doing some excellent work over the years.
Yes.
I think it was started by Diana Mahabir Wyatt.
Yes.
And she's an amazing woman, past senator in our parliament, and she still continues to do amazing work, because she's started, I think, recently the Caribbean Center for Human Rights,
right,
which is run by a colleague of mine, Denise Pitcher. So we see persons in our society really doing good work to support other women, at that time. But you mentioned also that before the gender-based violence work started, I know there's been a lot of activity and work around gender-based violence in Trinidad and in Tobago. But how has that changed, or how has that influenced the work that you're doing over the years? Because PADA started in 2016, which would have been before this whole GBV activity taking place. Is it that you're now a part of the GBV network, or have you seen an improvement in what's happening in Tobago? Shed some light on that.
So before the gender-based violence, that unit started, as I said, once a woman walks in the police station, they had my information, and they would call us, and we would go down and start the process. With gender-based, when that unit came on, they still used to call us a little bit, and I recognize it has gone down. Now people themselves just call us. Sometimes we go with them because they are a little bit frightened to go to the police station. So they would contact us, and I would go with them to make sure, listen, as long as we are assisting a family, a woman, of a vulnerable woman in a vulnerable situation, we must make sure that they they go to the station and make a report.
Make a police report, yes.
You have to make that the first law of order of the business. And so we will go down with them and ensure that it's done and they get a receipt. If not, we go back and make sure they gets it. And with gender-based, it's a little bit different. Because a couple years ago, I would have gotten a call from a lady, because she knows the work that we do, and she said, listen, she have one of her co-worker here with her, and she wants me to come down. And I went down and I spoke with her, and she was an older gentleman who was beating her, and I told her, I said, listen, you tell me what you want to do, because I can tell you what you need to do, but you have to want to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm here to support you. And she sat there and she was like, I can't take it again. I had enough. I said, okay, let's go to the station. I will be with you. I wouldn't leave you. And we went to the police station, and gender-based unit was already, that unit was already existing. And I saw that young lady sat down there and tell her story, and tell her story, and tell her story, and tell her story, until she said, listen, I'm tired. I can't do it again. And, the officer was apologizing, and he was apologetic, and he was kind and everything, and I saw how frustrating, because for me, I knew exactly what she was going through. The amount of time you have to repeat yourself, and it's come like you're reliving this thing all over again. And then eventually he said, well, okay, I'll get most of the information from Dr. Soman. And we need to take you up to the, because she had bruises. We need to take you up to the hospital.
A medical.
And, she turned around and she told him, she said, listen, I'll go for myself. And he said, well, no, we need to get the report and stuff like that. And she said that she's going to go. And I got called out on another case that I had to go on. And I was told that she sat at the hospital there. She gave her name, and she sat there, and she sat there, and she sat and sat and sat until, and this was morning time, until about 3-4 o'clock she left.
Wow.
Now things have to change.
Yeah.
And for me, that's why I advocate. Unless you walk this journey, it's nothing about what is happening. You don't know how hard and how heartbreaking it is when you have to keep repeating yourself. You don't know what it is to sit down outside on a hospital bench and you're in pain, and you sit there and you have to wait for hours.
Yes.
Things have to change.
But even for other persons, because for myself, I know if I have a complaint about in a business place or some customer service complaint that I may have, or even if I call a government office, let's say, and you want certain bits of information, sometimes they put you onto 3 and 4 different persons. You have to keep repeating yourself, You have a customer complaint, you have to keep, because they send you to the clerk refers you to the supervisor refers you to the manager then wants to refer you to the owner. And you have to keep repeating the complaint over and over. So that is annoying in itself.
Yes.
So we're talking about something you have experienced internally.
And not only experience internally, something you're going through right now.
Correct. And you really just want to see immediate results. You want to get out of it. You want somebody to tell you, okay, we're going to fix this, or we're going to deal with this situation. Right. And so I can well understand. And, we know how sometimes some of the medical services operate in the public sector. It's not always the best. So even that in itself. But when you do go with a law enforcement officer, it usually helps the situation, and it helps to expedite the situation, usually, right? I stress usually.
Yes.
I'm hearing all of this. So would you say that, things have improved from since you had your experience to now?
Definitely. There's so much organization that is around. We do so much more education.
Yes, sorry, we got a pause. I'm seeing Dr. Green giving the little signal. So we're gonna break. We're gonna take a short break, and we're going to some ads, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Heart Talk Between Sisters radio broadcast. Tune in to a heartwarming and enlightening radio experience like no other. Join us on a journey of love, laughter, and lifelong connections as we explore the unique bond between sisters. Our broadcast is a celebration of sisterhood, offering a safe space for candid conversations, shared memories, and inspiring stories that touch the soul. Whether you're a sister yourself or simply appreciate the beauty of this extraordinary relationship, this broadcast is for you. Discover the secrets of sisterly love, support, and understanding as we delve into personal experiences and heart-to-heart conversations that will make you smile, cry, and reflect. So, grab your favorite cup of tea, get cozy, and let our Heart Talk Between Sisters broadcast warm your heart and lift your spirits. Join us every week for an emotional journey filled with wisdom, connection, and the enduring power of sisterly bonds. Don't miss out on this extraordinary experience.
To listen to our station WCAN Radio for this and other informative programs all day long, visit www.wcanradio.us. To be a special guest in any of our segments or to support us financially through sponsorship, call 1-868-397-5961 or 1-678-856-3709.
Okay, and we are here live in studio, and I am interviewing Dr. Kamane Soman from the island of Tobago, Trinidad and Tobago. And we are talking about Dr. Soman's NGO, which she started in Tobago in 2016 as a result of her own experience coming out of a domestic situation, PADA. And Dr. Soman is here. We are talking about the support and her experience, her own experience and experience with coming out of the situation, her domestic situation. So Dr. Soman, we were talking about things have improved. You've seen an improvement in the support and in the systems for survivors of this experience. And so let's talk some more about it in terms of the support for children and the support also for even women and men. I don't know if you would have had to deal with men having to make those types of reports.
So we actually do one or two. We did have where we had men go into the system, go into the court, go into the station to make reports. You know, as I said, since gender-based violence unit, since that unit was brought on, we see the police officers are more sensitive towards abuse, both for both male and female. And now there's child protection units, and we're seeing how they are coming down. You know, we're seeing a lot of awareness. People are speaking out. Not as much as we want them to, but you know what? People are speaking out. And you know, we do counsel men as women and children. We do assist. We also do something called family mediation, because you know, Christ created the family, and we want to have the family together. And if we can, we try our best. So we do something called family mediation, where we do hold the mediation with couples and families, and that has helped a lot. You know, so we're seeing things. I mean, abuse is there.
Yes.
And we always need to educate people more, because we do have people that still say things like, no, was she like it? That's why she going back, or that why she's staying. They don't understand.
Yes.
They firmly don't understand. But we're seeing the court, we're seeing the police, we're seeing the business people, we're seeing people around that is a little more sensitive to the situation.
Yes, and that's very encouraging to hear, you know. I want to go back to what you mentioned about family mediation, because, you know, our country is made up of communities, you know, our country are made up of communities and neighborhoods and cities, and families are what makes up communities.
Correct.
Yeah, whether it's single parent family, you know, extended families make up communities. So if our families are in order, and if our families are in right standing, if you want to see, and if our families are functional and operating in a healthy way, then we will have a healthy community. If we have healthy communities, then we have a healthy nation.
Agreed.
So what you're doing in family mediation is actually very preventative in terms of, preventing a situation from escalating to the point where it has to end up becoming a crime, or it ends up becoming a nuisance to the community and by large the country.
Yes.
So you want to tell us some more about some experiences you have had in family mediation and some of the positive results that you've seen?
Just before COVID hit, we would have done community meetings where we would go into the communities and we'll hold meetings. We'll let them know who we are, what we do, and we just have candid conversation, real talk, candid conversation. And we would hear sometimes the men say, "No, I do beat my wife." I mean, I just tell she this, I would tell her that, and then we'll bring it to them. We talk different types of abuse. There's emotional abuse, physical abuse, economical abuse, spiritual abuse. Because we heard one man say, I ain't let you go along to that church. And they didn't know, you would hear him say, even women, you would say, well, no, he don't hit me, but he would throw things, he would, and we'll say, and we had to explain. And for me, as I said, education is a key. I believe this firmly. Education is a key to eradicate violence. So when we started saying and explaining to them and showing them, okay, well, that is abuse and what form of abuse it is. And they would, oh, okay. And we did get calls for family mediation where, and even the husband, he comes in and he would talk and he would express how he feel. And, sitting in a family mediation, sometimes it's just everybody just talking and nobody's listening. We're just talking to hear what we want to hear. But when you sit there and you actually listen to what he had to say or how he felt, or what she had to say and how you actually sat there and listened, you recognize, okay, well, it just blew up.
Wow. Just from having that mediation session.
Just having that mediation session.
Yeah. Wow. So can you imagine? So you're seeing like the anger and sometimes a lot of hurt coming out in those sessions. And these are things that could escalate to physical.
Yes.
And beyond there, and then the statement is made, well, the person never did that before, they were never violent before.
Yes.
And it's a suddenly moment.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. So again, we're seeing that the work that you're doing is very preventative and very much helpful in the community. And, I think once people are comfortable with you, they will open up, you and the staff and the persons who work in your organization, that they will open up, particularly the men. We know the men and the boys, is always a little more challenging with them. Do you have male persons working with you in the organization to treat with the men and the boys?
So not anymore. We are looking to have volunteers and people join because we always in need of counselors, mediators, and more male to come on board with us. So at the moment, no. We do have volunteers, but at the moment, no. So we're looking to have more people on board with us.
Okay, right, yes. And actually there are some men and boys who may be more, well, in case of children, children, they tend to say the better practice for children is to have a female dealing with the children, but as boys or girls, depending on the situation, of course, and of course, depending on the nature of what it is, the men, of course, men dealing with men, women with women. Well, as you were talking there about the family situation, I was reminded of trauma, and what trauma causes persons to do. And, we talk about the three things that trauma can do: fight, flight, or freeze.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything? I'm not an expert on this, but I know that these are some of the things you hear when you talk about trauma. And so, in the case of violence and persons reacting in a violent manner, that's the fighting. Some persons may choose to run, flight, or some persons may choose to freeze. And I was talking earlier this week to somebody about that freezing. When we are fearful, we see a frog in the road in front of us, or we see a snake, and the immediate reaction is to scream and freeze.
True.
You know, because we just don't want this thing to touch us. Right. But you know, there's something called, I'm not a psychologist, but mentally freezing. I don't know what you call it. Right. But in chatting with this person, you know, they were saying that, you know, the partner, the spouse, isn't physically abusive. They're not verbally insulting, but it's just that the circumstances, you know, there are some women or some persons who are in living situations where the partner actually creates an environment where you have to be financially dependent upon them, or emotionally dependent upon them. So they're not beating you, they're not nothing, you know, they're not insulting you, cussing you, nothing like that. It's just that every time you need money, or anytime you need to do anything for yourself or for the home, you have to go to them to get money.
And that is a form of abuse. That's power and control, and that's where it starts. It starts where they isolate you. You have to depend on them for everything.
Yes.
You know, so that's where the power and control comes.
Yes. And I wanted us to talk some more about that, because, and the person said, you know, that they had gotten so accustomed to that situation. I mean, they wanted to start their own little business. They have all these ideas to do things, you know, to make things and sell, to do this and sell and all of that kind of stuff. But every time they think of doing it, they have to think that they have to go to this person to get that, go to this person to get that, you know. And they had gotten to the point where mentally they had just signed off. You know, so even in talking with them, well, why don't you're so good at making this, making that, making the other, making this, you know, why don't you make these things and sell them and make some money and stuff, you know? And I'm wondering, is that what do you call that mental freeze? Because it's almost like you're so traumatized in this situation. And sometimes you, the person, don't realize that you are actually being traumatized. You know,
the thing about it is that sometimes when we do a little more, we see cases like this and we do a little more digging, we recognize that this thing started from childhood. And let's say, you know, she's married to this person that is doing that, and she just physically, mentally, everything just gives up because it peace in your house. It makes things easy to have peace. But when we dig deeper, we recognize, listen, she would have gone through challenges and growing up. And coming now into this relationship, into this marriage, that's why it becomes so easy for her to accept it, because it's something that she knows. It's familiar grounds. You understand? So it's easy for her to accept. Where in a different case where somebody didn't grow up like that, recognize it immediately and try to seek for help and try to get out of it.
Right.
So sometimes when we really dig, and we dig, because it's hard, abuse is as I said, it's a learned behavior, and you can't just unlearn something just like that. So it's hard. When we start counseling these women and we start to go back into childhood and growing up, we recognize, wow, it is a lot. By the time we finish childhood and teenager and start going to the adult, it takes a while. It just doesn't happen like this. And we need women to start recognizing. We need them to start recognizing the signs of abuse and start recognizing if situations makes you uncomfortable. You are having a conversation with someone, maybe male or female. COVID would have taught us and did a number on a lot of us. Mental illness reared its head during COVID. Our basic human rights were taken away from us. We couldn't even go out and do simple things like exercise. Seeing mental illness so strong, right? So you're hearing a lot of young people saying things like, I'm getting anxious. I can't do this, and more staying away and just by themselves. You're seeing a lot of people doing those things. We need people now to stand up and say, listen, this situation makes me uncomfortable. It's taking some of my peace away from me. We will have to reconvene another time. We need people to start speaking up and not just sit there and just let people or our partners, our family, and just say these things to us, and we just sit there and say, okay, but let him just get it out of his system. To say, listen, can we talk another time? We need to get somebody who could come and sit with us and say, listen, what you did, what you said to me, this is how I felt when you said that. We need to have people start opening up and talking.
Yeah. Yes. That's interesting, because, in our Caribbean culture, I should say, I can't speak for other cultures. But in the Caribbean culture, we tend to just accept what is the plate that is put before us, we take it.
Oh, he having a bad day. She's having a bad day.
Yeah.
But it's unacceptable for it to leash you on your bad day on me.
Yeah. But the thing is, you have to know that this is not the norm, because for many persons, as you said, because of how we grow up, this is normal and this is accepted, because this is what I know. I saw my parents this way. I saw my grandparents this way. I saw my aunties and my uncles this way. I saw the people in my environment this way. So this is all. I don't know anything else. I don't even know there's better than this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, how do you help somebody like that? I mean, even you in your line of work, I'm sure you would have met persons where you're trying to actually get them out of that mental, it's like a mental bondage.
Yes.
Didn't you feel frustration? You want to strangle them. You want to hold them and shake them and say, wake up,
Alana, one of the secret that I have, and it's a very powerful secret. You see, prayer is powerful. It could unlock anything.
Yes.
There's just power in the name of Jesus.
Wow.
And awesome. As long as I have somebody that I'm talking to and it's okay with them for us to pray, I leash that power of prayer over them.
And you actually
as long as they are okay with it. I don't force anything on anybody, but as long as they are okay with it, I pray.
And what sort of results have you seen from that?
I've seen people come back from where they blame God for the situation, and just having a session where it is that we really started off supposed to be counseling, and they said, listen, they ask me, people ask me this constantly, are you a Christian? And I say, I'm a child of God. And the lady, she asked me, yes, a Christian, and I said, well, I'm a child of God. And, she said, well, we could pray if you like. And I said, sure. And that session turned out to be such a powerful prayer session between her and I, where we just pray and ask God to cover her and her children and her marriage. And what I recognize is that when people hurting, they look for a church to go to.
Yes. Well, they seek God. We seek God in times of trouble, and that's a good thing. It's a good thing.
But if it is as a church, if we don't know how to deal with situation, we don't know how to deal with vulnerable family, vulnerable women, we don't know how to deal with it, we could turn them away.
Yes. So on that note, we'll pause again for some ads, and we'll be back in a few minutes.
Give me my phone.
What you doing taking them kind of pictures? I'll tell mommy.
And I'll tell her you invaded my privacy.
Privacy? When you send those pics, you lose all privacy. It's like setting up a billboard with your naked pics for the world to see.
Those pictures are for my boyfriend's eyes only, and he'll never do that to me.
Yes, he can, or one of his friends or family. Or someone can steal his phone. Nice. Sending naked pics can open you up to embarrassment for you, your family, and friends. You can be harassed by bullies. Your pics can be uploaded to websites and seen by everybody, even the wrong people, sex offenders. It can also affect you getting a good job in the future. Once those pictures go out, you can never get them back.
Okay, I'll tell my boyfriend to delete them, and I'll delete these. I'm glad I have a smart little sister.
I'm still telling mommy.
Okay, and we are back with Dr. Kamane Soman talking about, we're at the point where we are talking about emotional abuse and mental abuse and even financial abuse also. And Dr. Soman has been sharing on some of the good things that have been happening and the good results she's been having, talking about persons in these situations crying out to God and seeking help from Almighty God to get out of these situations and to overcome them. Dr. Soman?
Hi. So as I said, as long as we're in a session and it's okay with the person or the persons that we're with, and we pray, I recognize how powerful prayer is. I recognize how even just calling the name of God and Jesus, how much healing it brings to a person's life.
Yes.
I would have recognized that in my own life because I would have experienced it in my days during my survival with my children, and I would have recognized how God is with me. I could feel it. I could feel His presence. I could hear Him talking in my ear. So I know how powerful it is, but I can't force that upon somebody.
Of course.
Also, just like the counseling, they have to want it. And I've seen great results.
Yes, and if the academic and the literature, the academic literature speaks about how trauma affects us in different ways, and trauma affects us not just physically and emotionally, but trauma affects us mentally and spiritually.
Agreed.
That's what the academic literature says. So even for anybody who is out there and who may say, well, I don't believe in God, I don't believe in prayer or praying or anything, there is a spiritual dimension of trauma that oftentimes, if we don't address that aspect of it, then that person has not been fully restored and fully healed. So physically, they may be restored. Mentally and emotionally, they would have gotten all these psychological interventions, and we certainly do endorse the psychologists coming in and giving counseling and giving interventions. That is definitely much needed. Some people even need psychiatric intervention.
Yes.
And that is important. But we ought not to recognize that there is a spiritual dimension. The person on the inside, right, who is affected and who is affected even more deeply because of the traumatic experience. So would you like to tell us some more about that?
Like for me, from my own experience, during my domestic violence situation, at that time, he used to go to church with us, and he got saved and he got baptized. And for me, it was heartbreaking because there were times when he would, beat me, and then we'd go to church, and then he would say in church, while we're in church, why not raising my hand to praise God? And I was battling, I was battling. For me, I was battling within myself. I used to question God, but I saw God's hand in my life. And we ought to live the way Christ wants us to live. And, we have all of these things going on and on where people say, oh, she's a Christian. She don't live like that. And, we really need to take stock of that. We really need to take stock of our life and the way we live and the way we ought to live. Because our life should be portraying Christ.
Yes.
Because He created us in His own image and likeness. So we ought to do that. So we need to be very careful of what we're saying and how we say things and what we portray. And I'm very, very careful of things like that. I thank God that I'm not an impulsive person. So I pray before I do anything. And I seek God's direction before I do anything. And sometimes I get this feeling and things are not going the way it should, and I would stop and I would say, God is not a God of confusion. I'm not saying that it will all go smooth, but you get that feeling you get that feeling. You get that feeling as a child of God. You get that feeling that is deep within you that something is not right, or I could safely go down this path.
Yes, yes. You know, I remember as you're talking about Christian and Christianity and everything, and certainly this is not a program. This is not a program where we're trying to impose anything on anyone by all means, but Dr. Soman is simply sharing her life experience, and this is how she has dealt with the trauma in her own life and being a survivor of domestic violence. And we are certainly free to share about our own experience. This is Dr. Soman's experience. But as you are sharing that, I am remembering Reverend Dr. Austin John de Boog saying something about Christian, you know, just like we are Trinidadian and Tobagonian, and we had a Ghanaian on this program last week, person from Ghana. A Trinidadian is somebody from Trinidad, well, Trinidad and Tobago. And, you know, so we have a Christian who is a person who is Christ-like, you know. And so Christian and Christianity is a way of life. It's not a religion or anything. It's not a spiritual something. It is a way of life. And it's a way of life that's guided by Jesus Christ, right? Christian. You know, so if we are Christians or Christians, then we are to be Christ-like and to demonstrate the character of Jesus Christ and who Jesus Christ was. And we all know that Jesus Christ is a real man. He was a real man who lived on the earth. All the history books acknowledge that. The history books acknowledge that there was a man named Jesus Christ who walked the face of the earth 2,000 plus years ago, and that he was a miracle worker. Right? It's documented in history. So there's no doubt about that. And so the Christians are the ones who follow Jesus Christ, followers of Jesus. So, you know, I thank you so much for all of your courage and your strength in sharing who you are and who you were and who you have become over the years, and even about your children. You know, those are very personal things to talk about. And even your own experience working with survivors of domestic violence. And I know that you're very, very busy today. And I really want to thank you for taking the time out to really share with our audience, our listening audience from all over the world. And I just wanted to ask you, is there anything that you would like to say specifically to our listeners? We have listeners from the African continent. We have listeners from the Caribbean region. We have listeners from the Lowani group, which is the Leaders of All Nations International. And so, what would you like to say to all of these persons, women, men, young persons who might be listening in on our program?
Yes. So 2 things I normally share with and assist women, vulnerable women that come to me, ways to live yourself. And living for yourself, and ways that you can, and ways that to live your life. And you need to get to know yourself better, because vulnerable women, sometimes we are lost. We get lost in the entire trauma that we would have gone through. Mm-hmm. So ways to get to know yourself and ways to live a better life is determine your values. So number 1, you're going to determine your value and set your moral codes that you want to live by. Discover your own unique personality, because as vulnerable women, sometimes people put things on us and they tell us we are not good enough, we can never amount to anything. So number 2, you are going to discover your own unique personality. 3, decide what you want your future to be like. Discover while you're deciding what you want your future to look like. Number 4, you are going to discover your strength and your weaknesses. And 5, when you discover that, you are going to focus on your strength and your weaknesses and your interests. We need to remember to do something called self-care as women. We need to do self-care. So everybody do self-care differently. For me, I wake up, I pray and I give thanks. I drink a glass of water. Every night I put a glass of water by my bed and I drink a glass of water. I make my bed. So if I don't get anything accomplished in my house that day, I already accomplished something. I made my bed. And one of the things that I always do, I put off from checking my phone. Have you noticed that when you wake up, you use your phone as the alarm, and the alarm going off?
Yes.
Phone, and you're going on WhatsApp, you're going on email, you're going on all these things, and hours gone, you're done late for work already. You're racing on the people highway. Put off from checking your phone. You can use something else to give you a time. And you need to start repeating positive affirmation about yourself. Positive affirmation. And one of the positive affirmation that I love and I put up all over my house, I mean, it's a verse, 2 Corinthians 3:5. I am enough because I am complete in Christ. And I say these things to myself. I am a kind, powerful woman of God. And I am good enough. I am more than enough. And I say those things constantly to myself. Because if we recognize that God spoke this world into universe, so we need to start speaking things into our life. So those are some of the things I help vulnerable women do. And I've seen major changes in their lives and in their attitude and even in their family lives.
Dr. Soman, thank you for all these wonderful insights. Thank you to the island of Tobago for lending our community. They've lent you to our community, and they've lent you to Tobago, the island of Tobago. And we just want to say thank you, and thank you to all of the persons in your group, PADA, and all the support persons and agencies that you have, who they have all contributed to making you who you are today.
Yes.
Thank you to the support you would have received from church.
Yes.
And we thank God. We thank God Almighty for making you into the woman who you are today, that you are able to give back so much. And I have written everything, all the 5 pointers that you just gave us.
Yes.
For myself, I am guilty of the get up in the morning cell phone alarm, watch the first WhatsApp messages that coming and stuff, I'm most guilty of that. So I take note of that. And so I'm just going to repeat what you just said. For anyone who was writing it down, I'm just going to repeat it. Determine your values, discover your unique personality, decide what you want your future to be like. Discover your strengths and your weaknesses and focus on building and improving on these. Self-care and, most important, prayer. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 5. So on this note, we leave you this afternoon, and we thank you again for tuning in to Heart Talk Between Sisters, where we are sharing stories, inspiring growth, and empowering lives. Have a wonderful weekend to all our listeners, and stay tuned into next week's session, where we'll have another surprise guest for you. Have a great weekend all, and goodbye.
Heart Talk Between Sisters radio broadcast. Tune in to a heartwarming and enlightening radio experience like no other. Join us on a journey of love, laughter, and lifelong connections as we explore the unique bond between sisters. Our broadcast is a celebration of sisterhood, offering a safe space for candid conversations, shared memories, and inspiring stories that touch the soul. Whether you're a sister yourself or simply appreciate the beauty of this extraordinary relationship, this broadcast is for you. Discover the secrets of sisterly love, support, and understanding as we delve into personal experiences and heart-to-heart conversations that will make you smile, cry, and reflect. So, grab your favorite cup of tea, get cozy, and let our Heart Talk Between Sisters broadcast warm your heart and lift your spirits. Join us every week for an emotional journey.